our first guest is, as Shannon said earlier, an autism dad. His name is Jim Hamilton, and he is an advocate. And his career, he has been a high-frequency quant trader, which I'm not exactly sure what even that is. So
I had to Google it, but I did. And guess what? I still don't understand. I still don't understand. He'll have to explain it to us. I Googled it, though. I did look it up.
Okay. He's been a high-frequency quant trader for a Chicago firm. And he has a background in statistics, computer science, and finance. He's a brainiac. And he is an advocate. And we're going to hear a little bit about his advocacy for autism, for ABA, and his work with insurance advocacy.
Yes.
And, his name is Jim Hamilton. Yeah, his name is Jim Hamilton. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good to have you here, Jim. First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your family members?
Yeah. So my wife and I just moved back here to Kansas, but we have our son John, who was diagnosed with ASD when he was 2. He's now 7. Daughter Cece, 4 years old, and son James, 6 months.
So you are Jim, and you have a son named James. I can relate to. Yeah. My husband is Jim, and our son is James. It's a thing. It's a trend. Good luck to you. We've had difficulty with it. I hope it goes smoother for you than it has for us. But it's all good. It's a great name. You gotta love the name in all of its iterations. So maybe end the controversy for us here. I did look up quant. And try to what a quant trader was. I'm not going to pretend I understand it. What in the heck is that?
I don't know. You know, my wife struggles with it too. People ask, and I just I've told her, yeah, I'm just a trader. It's just a little more math, a little more computer science, but just a trader.
Okay, because it was something because the quant stands for quantitative, right?
Or quantitative analyst. My point in saying that was I have absolutely no experience in behavioral health or anything related to my son's diagnosis. So I was swimming, I was without a paddle there, so I had to catch up quick, just like every other parent, really.
Tell us a little bit about his diagnosis. You mentioned that he was diagnosed with autism when he was 2 years old. Tell us a little bit about that experience and what that was like for you.
Yeah. So my wife is she was a kindergarten teacher here in Kansas, and then we moved to Chicago as well. She went to school for special ed, so she saw the signs when he was 6 months old. He wasn't rolling over. He couldn't hold his head up. We did the helmet thing. So it was quickly diagnosed, by her. And I kind of looked at it as, you mentioned this in your book, but the first stage is, it's the 5 stages, right? The first stage is denial. So I was definitely in the denial stage there, but and up until we got the diagnosis, I was certain that my wife was wrong, but of course she wasn't. Yeah, it was tough, but it's my wife dealt with it by reading a bunch of books, and I couldn't. The books didn't help me because they were more pep talky. Which is great, but that wasn't what I was looking for. So I was looking for more information. And had I known about your book then, I would have enjoyed that. But I didn't. I read. There were no practical guides, so I just dug in deep to the scientific papers and kind of caught up that way. So.
Well, I think your tale is very familiar tale, right? I think a lot of, especially dads, it's not across the board. I know at least one friend that she was the one in denial and her husband was the person saying, honey, I think you got to look at this. But I think more often than not, it's the dad that is in denial. We know Rodney Peete, the title of his book was Not My Son. Talk about, I call it the river in Egypt, denial. But I think it's hard for the dads, Jim. I think, I think it's a hard thing for them. And we see a lot of dads who struggle with the acceptance of it, but you look like somebody to me that kind of quickly got on board. Is that the truth of it, or did it take you a while after the diagnosis?
Yeah, no, I mean, the next day I had bought an ABA textbook and I was trying to, really figure out where I could pitch in here. So once we got it, once it was true, you know.
Who had told you about ABA though? Because when they diagnosed, did they tell you about ABA at that appointment?
No, and you're absolutely right. It wasn't an ABA textbook that I got. I read some papers and I didn't know about ABA for months after the fact. But it was, and it was frustrating what we did first. We went through a specific type of therapy that was not ABA. And, it's kind of beyond the scope here, but it wasn't, I didn't love it. But we quickly found ABA and found a good spot.
So you found ABA how long after the diagnosis?
We got diagnosed when he was just under 2, maybe 18 months. I think maybe a few months before he turned 2, and we found ABA by the time he was 2. So we did move quick, and we were quick to interview and test out ABA, but we had found our favorite ABA place by the time he was 2.
Here's what I want to know, Jim. What was it that you found out about ABA that you went, this is the thing that we're going to go get? And why did that become so important to you?
Well, you mentioned my background, but I'm big into data. My argument is, if you're not measuring it, it's not science. And if it's not science, then what are we doing here? So what I love about ABA is, yes, these are qualitative skills, and yes, it is difficult to measure them, but you can measure them. My son struggles with screaming, just kind of impulsively, and his therapist developed tools to monitor that. We've got the voice level system, whatever it is. So, but you can measure outbursts, and we can have an incidence, plot of this and have a moving average of it over the last weeks, and we can see that, yeah, these tools are working. This is when we started to do, when we started to implement this tool, and yeah, after the next, extinction burst and all that, it did actually come down. So it is measurable, and it is, even though maybe at first blush it feels like it shouldn't be.
And you said, Jim, you all had a goal to get John into a private school that would allow an ABA therapist. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, so for us, it was important that we have ABA therapy in school, because in my mind, ABA therapy is the gold standard in treatment for a child with autism. And maybe that's controversial, but it's at least the easiest thing to get approved by insurance, let's say. And in Kansas, an IEP will get you speech, PT, OT, maybe some para time, maybe some special ed teacher pull-out time. But it is most often just that, it's pull-out time. And you mentioned this in your book. You say, if he's getting pulled out of math to learn speech, then what's the game? And big proponent of math. So it was not worth it to me to get speech, PT, and OT, which I feel like I could get on a Saturday or after school. I want to get schooling when I can get it. And the nice thing about ABA is we can pursue these goals while we're pursuing academic goals. They're not, and my insurance provider disagreed initially, at least, that they're not, that they can't be done in tandem. Well, they absolutely can. And in fact, they complement each other very well. So going the public school route, unfortunately, wasn't an option for us. Going the IEP route wasn't an option. I wanted ABA therapy and for personal reasons, we chose this particular private school. We wanted to go to this private school, and we wanted ABA therapy in the school. And it was a struggle. We had a struggle, one, getting the principal on board, and two, getting it passed through insurance. So, the struggle to getting it through the principal was, we had to teach her and her team what is ABA. So our BCBA volunteered her own time to come in and teach our first grade or our kindergarten teacher, some tools, observe them in class and teach her some tools. And they all kind of got on board. They saw, yeah, these are actually usable tools that we can use in the classroom, and it does mitigate behavior. Um, so we got them on board with that, and um, then it was kind of showing them that we weren't going to be, we were going to be one of those parents. We're not going away. We're going to be, respectful but persistent. And then it was, we're meeting with them once a month, and it's, what are palpable, uh, what are what are actual blockers? Give me actual things. So we got our RBT to take this 2-hour training course, or sign a waiver for confidentiality of other students, or a slip and fall waiver, adhere to a dress code. So there were like a litany of things that we had to get done, and we finally adhered to it. So we got to a place where uh, the staff there was willing to let it happen. And it sounds, I'm saying it out loud, it sounds like a no-brainer, right? Why wouldn't a principal, why wouldn't a school want, uh, why wouldn't they welcome free professional help for a student? But it is actually, this principal faced some significant headwinds. Um, she was, you know, going against tradition in this school system. And really, my son is the pilot program for the whole school system for ABA in the classroom, um, and just for this like private network of schools in Kansas. So really, I'm grateful for this principal. She's done a lot of work, and she made really what I think is a courageous decision. Um, so we got it approved by the school. Then the next bit was get it approved by insurance, and that's probably the most difficult part of the story, was because mid last winter we thought we got provisional approval, and we thought, well, the battle's over, we've won, right? So we just have to wait for the principal to approve, and she did by May, and we thought, okay, we're golden. So then we say, here, we submit like formal requests for these services, and then we don't hear for a couple of weeks, and I figure that's fine. It's just the slow gears of insurance moving, right? But 2 weeks into it, my BCBA gets a call from a care coordinator, that the case manager at my insurance company, and they set up a case consultation where an insurance PhD meets with my practicing BCBA and kind of pressured her to withdraw the in-school language of the uh, request for services. And I had asked prior to attend this call. I wasn't allowed to attend this call. But my BCBA made, I think, a reasonable decision, which was to withdraw it, because what they said was, okay, well, if you leave it in there, we're going to deny it, and this kid's not going to get services all summer. So she made a reasonable decision. She withdrew it. My son got services for the summer, and then we're kind of at a loss for days. So days and hours we're on the phone trying to figure something out. I reach out to an insurance advocate, a special needs advocate, other ABA clinics in the area, try to see what's working. Nothing's working. And then just kind of, my wife's doing research on the side, and she finds this PDF. And the PDF was written by Julie Cornack, friend of your show, by the Center for Autism letterhead. And it was specifically about ABA therapy in a classroom. And we thought, oh, this is great. This is exactly what we're talking about. And I had Julie's email address on the bottom. So my wife just kind of, we're grasping at straws. She sends an email to Julie. And we didn't know Center for Autism. And I mentioned to you guys earlier that we actually lived around the corner from the Center of Autism when we were in Chicago. So we didn't actually, and I didn't know that until, I heard Julie's name. So within an hour, Julie had responded, and with empathy and concrete, usable information. And she said this, and I know this after going back to your archives and watching her on your show this last week. She mentioned the Mental Health Parity Act, and she talks about having a button with mental health parity. Got mental health parity. I want to get one of those buttons. But in short, the reason it's applicable is, the act explicitly states non-qualitative treatment limitations, and it says, and I'll read it: restrictions based on geographic location, facility type, provider specialty, and other criteria to limit the scope or duration of benefits and services are not allowed. So that's exactly what we wanted, right? The scope in an academic setting, and it was, or facility type rather, and then the scope during academic hours. So it was hope, really. So we took that, and in the next week, we kind of crafted an addendum, a request to again to amend our services, and Julie responded to several more emails, which I really appreciate. But I'm writing this with my BCBA, and we're talking about, it's we have to prove medical necessity for ABA in the classroom. So we showed that there are we showed that there are certain behaviors that only present in the classroom that need to be addressed in the classroom, because this is the environment where they present. It cannot be done in a clinical setting, right? And if we want to use these tools to generalize across settings, well, we should probably generalize across the setting, where he spends most of his time. So it makes sense. And then we were very explicit. The RBT is not going to pursue academic goals. He's going to pursue, ABA goals and paralleled academic goals. So so we proved in one page medical necessity, and in the second page, I took this litany of quotes that the care coordinator gave me from the insurance company. She gave me she went through their guidelines and gave me a highlighted list of these are the reasons why we can't do it in an academic setting. So I cited each one of them, from their guidelines, and I said why each one of them did not, pertain to my son, or why it violated mental health parity, or violated Illinois state law. My insurer is in Illinois. So there's, specific Illinois state law that addresses this as well, which was, so it was a complete argument against both medical necessity of scope and you should absolutely, these are your objections and they're all wrong. And then, so we don't hear for a couple of weeks, and then this is the last bit, but we don't hear for a couple of weeks. And so I write the care coordinator at the insurance company, a very polite email, and I just said, obviously we'd love it if you could approve, but if you're going to reject, please let us know as soon as possible so we can get started on the appeals process. And that was all I said. And then the next day, there's a voicemail in our BCBA's, voicemail saying it was approved. So it was a victory for us. It was huge, but they couldn't have done it without Center for Autism, for sure.
But honestly, Jim, it's a victory for all of us. I got to tell you, because you're talking to two women who have been through countless IEPs. We've also been through them with other families. What do we hear the most, Nancy, when people have kids that are school age? People always say to me, how did you get an aide in the classroom? Now, we've been telling them for years about here are some steps you can do it in the public school. But in the private school setting, it's always been this really hard thing. And we've been saying, it's really hard because insurance won't pay for anything that's educational. Right. And I'm, we've got parents that are challenging even that. But the fact that you have come in and taken the very laws that they have written and held their feet to the fire to get them to provide those services at the school for those things that are medically necessary, you've helped not only your child, but you've helped so many children coming behind you. And I hope you and your wife know that, because that is huge.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't me, it was Julie for sure. But I think it's incredibly important that we have ABA's therapy in the classroom. I mean, an IEP should provide that, and it doesn't, and that's really a travesty. But this is the type of therapy that my son needs. So having it in the classroom, I'm lucky that I'm coming along so late in this movement that these laws already exist. I can't imagine being one of those Arizona parents who had to fight to get this even approved or even recognized as a correct something that could be covered by insurance.
Well, Nancy and I both love Julie Cornack. She's amazing, yes. And she's been fighting really hard for all of our kids for a really long time. But I got to tell you, I know that Julie loves parents like you, Jim, who will take the information that she's been putting out there and run with it. And I loved what you said about we let them know that we weren't those parents who were going to go away. I think that's critical. And the fact that you wrote to them and said, if you're going to deny, would you do it quickly? Because we're already planning our appeal. You sent them a message that they went, oh, okay, they're not really going to go away. And Nancy, don't we both agree? That's what gets it done sometimes, is showing them that you're going to stand in the street, and if they're going to play chicken, they're going to lose.
Yeah, you have to be tenacious no matter what.
What is it you say, Nancy? Be a dog on a pork chop?
Pork chop, yeah. Of course, in our case with my son, we were not able to get an ABA therapist with him in the public school. We tried for many years, and that the district we were at prides itself on never letting a non-public school aide into the classroom, and we went for a time to a private school and had his ABA therapist funded through insurance for a number of years. But
that was preschool, though, right? Or that was actually elementary, right? Some of it?
That was elementary, yeah.
But that was even before they were paying it for at home or at the center, right, Nancy?
Right, that's right.
And then when the insurance reform came, then they sort of cracked down and said, we're not paying for it at school anymore.
Right.
Make the school pay for it. We're paying for it at home now. And it's like the pendulum swings both ways. And the people who lose are the kids and the parents. Because Jim, I hope you'll talk a little bit about this. Had to have been stressful for you and your wife.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I'm. It kind of goes back to what we did right when we got the diagnosis. I'm more of internalize it and try to come up with like objective, what can what are some specific things I can try to accomplish? So I was more focused on that. My wife was, she actually reached out to Center for Autism and Julie. So she actually got it done, but she was also similarly stressed. So it was tough. I think what she and I have kind of agreed on, or maybe implicitly agreed on this, is that we're just not going to take no for an answer. We're just not, what's the real cost in appealing this or taking them to court? I mean, I'm going to do that, obviously. So, we'll just deal with it as it comes and just never let it go.
Absolutely. For us, my husband and I, we always said, in Life's Little Instruction Booklets, there was a page where it said, when going after Moby Dick, pack the tartar sauce. And whenever we were in hard times, I would always go buy a jar of tartar sauce and I would put it up on the ledge and I would go, we're not quitting until we get Moby Dick here, whatever it was. But the stress cannot be denied. Yeah. And I hope for a time that, the city on the hill, where when a child is diagnosed with autism, that parents are given good information right away and that they're given access to things that are right for that individual, which is not one size fits all, and that nobody has to fight over it. Yep. And I hope that someday we're going to get to that. And we've got a couple of minutes, Jim. I know one of the other things that we were hoping, if we had time, was to talk about everything that you've been through in terms of living in one place, moving to another, starting ABA, picking a clinic, and how it's got to be the right fit. And if you can give some advice to parents about how you guys did that, I think we'd both love to hear that. Wouldn't we, Nancy?
Yes, please.
Yeah. For me, what is the right fit for, I feel like what is the right fit for my son is a clinic that puts an emphasis on measuring and reporting. I want to have a monthly meeting with the BCBA. I want that meeting to be, I want 2 days before that meeting to get the written report and all the plots. I want to go over the plots. I'm going to send you questions the night before, so you have time to think about how you're going to answer them. And then on the day of the meeting, let's just rip through it and get it done. In and out in 15 minutes if we have to, it's fine. But let's give me some time to catch up to where you are as a BCBA, and give you some time to really think about the questions that I have. So that kind of relationship is, maybe I'm a little more demanding than most parents. That's kind of a relationship that I require of a clinic. And unfortunately, there were a handful of clinics that we went to that just the measurement wasn't rigorous enough, or the therapy wasn't generalizable enough. We weren't talking about we weren't talking about the same thing. I mean, they would, playtime is great so long as we're, yeah, and pairing with your RBT is absolutely required, sure. But it needs to be constructive, and you need to be sitting there with a clicker, or you need to be sitting there with your iPad taking notes as you're going, and we need to agree on what is the behavior we're targeting, how are we trying to measure success, and how are we going to know if we need to change tack, midway through this. We need to, it has to be based on a scientific method, and if it's not, then it's really not worth my son's time. But, and you've said this before, which is, there's a lot of studies that say that 40 hours are effective, and there are no studies that say that 20 hours are effective. And an ABA clinic, unfortunately, there's a shortage of RBTs right now, just nationwide, and it's difficult to get the hours that you've maybe even gotten approved for by your insurance company. So another big thing is make sure that you're on a list, and you're also not just on that list and not just going to get some hours. Don't take me off the list if I'm going to get 10 hours. I'll stay where I am now and get the 35 that I'm getting. So it requires understanding what ABA therapy is, and knowing what's a good fit for you, and then fighting for it.
Absolutely. Amen to that. It's hard though. It's really, really hard. And I think for a lot of people, when in the beginning, if you don't know what it is that you're looking for, like you went looking for the thing, and I really want to apologize to you because I think my book is more of the pep talk that you said you weren't looking for. But I would tell you that the book that I recommend, if you're not looking for the pep talk, if you're looking for the how-to, we just had Dr. Mary Barbara Lynch on the show, and her book, Turn Autism Around. I'd love for you to take a look at that, Jim, because she's a mom who became a BCBA. She was an RN and became a BCBA, and is trying to help parents to understand what you need to do to get from point A to point Z. And I have a mission, Nancy does as well, that we try to give information to families that will be useful to them. I am always a little, I think, we're both fans of ABA, Nancy, but I think I'm a little bit more of a fan of that intensive, but probably because I got it, and I got it at the right time. And so my whole life is a testament to what's possible when you get it at the right time and the right intensity. And I see, it's very scary to me right now, how many people, we fought so hard, Nancy, didn't we, for people to be able to get access to what they have access to now. And there's parents who are just turning it down. They're being offered 35 hours of ABA, and they're like, 15 is fine. 15 sounds like a lot. He's only 3, never knowing that equation is not shown scientifically anywhere to be effective for a 3-year-old. 15 hours won't help your child in the way that you're hoping that it will.
Yeah. There's the early start Denver model study, and early intervention studies have shown that it's better than nothing, but it's definitely not as good as 40 hours. I mean, it's not. Yeah. For me, it had to be the full 40, and it's a lot for my son. It felt like a lot as a parent, but you know.
How do you guys manage it? Because you've got other kids. And so for the people who are watching are like, great, but how do you do it? How do you guys manage?
My wife does it. She is the workhorse. I mean, it's a priority for us. We plan vacations around it. We make sure that, you know, if, there's a lake house party or something this weekend, we're all going down on Thursday. Now we're going to be there Friday night. So it's absolutely our priority. So it's just the way it has to be.
Well, you say that your wife is doing it, then maybe tell us, because maybe the other dads need to hear this. How do you support her? Because I know I interviewed your husband once, Nancy, and he said, how are you getting this done? And he said, it's her, it's all her. And that every day he prayed that he was like, it said that when he would say to you, when you would leave the house, he would say, don't die. Don't die. And I know broke his heart. I don't know if you know, Jim, that her husband passed away several years ago. And it was the thing that one of the last things he said to me was, I don't want to leave her alone with this. But so tell other dads, Jim, how do you support your wife through this as she's being the project manager?
Yeah, I mean, she's the project manager, and I'm happy to take time off if John needs to go from uh, speech and PT over to ABA in the middle of the day. If that's just how the schedule is going to work, then fine. I'm quick to use whatever PTO I can to do that. But it also kind of just boils down to I'm there for all the meetings, and I like to be there for and I like to be on the same page as to if this is the schedule, or if these are the goals that we're trying to hit in ABA for this period, then I want to know what the program is so that I can start to implement it at night, so that when I get done with work, I can go up and take John in a corner, and we'll work on the program ourselves. And to give her that break is, I mean, that's really all I can do. But she's with him all day, every day.
Jim, tell us if you had advice to give fathers from your perspective now, what would it be? What would your advice be?
I'm a huge proponent of ABA, and again, that might be controversial, but I think it's crucial. So get into ABA as quickly as you can. Get as many hours as you can. You can get 40 hours. It doesn't matter what insurance tells you. You can get 40 hours. And when you're dealing with insurance or the school, these are good people. They're doing their jobs. They're not out to get you. They're your partners. So be, respectful and polite, and treat them like they're your, compatriots in this battle. But at the same time, be stern and go after what you want. Don't back down. I mean, you have an obligation to get it done for your kid. And you mentioned in your book, what if everybody, went after those 40 hours and everybody stood up and everybody said, well, I want, ABA for my kid in school. What if everybody did this? Then there would be a crisis. Well, let's do it, because
let's bring it on.
Kids need it.
Oh, you are my kind of dad, Jim. Let's create the crisis.
Yeah.
Because I think what's happening is insurance is creating quite the other crisis, where our kids are not getting enough. And then I see what happens as a result of that the services aren't there later on. And there is a crisis right now in the field of ABA, and we are starting to see ABA providers that are ceasing to be, because insurance has made the game in such a way, and nobody has trained the parents to fight back. So, man, love what you're doing, and you just opened a whole new can of worms for a whole bunch of people. One last question for you, because we're almost out of time, is how are you communicating your needs effectively with your employers so that you keep your job, aren't losing anything, because heaven knows you want to keep this insurance, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I'm not a person who's bashful about telling, whether it's people at school or other parents or my employer that my son has autism. It's not something to be ashamed of. This is the state of affairs. Let's talk about it. So I've communicated it to him. I've spoken to, it's kind of a small company. There's like 100 of us, but I've talked to, HR specifically about this battle, and they reached out to help me with a private insurance advocate. So it was there. I'm lucky to be at the employer I am, that I'm at, and they've been very good to me. But really, I haven't asked for too much time or anything, because Mary Kate's been doing all the work. So,
okay.
I pitch in
But I love that you're communicating it. That's so important. Well, amazing. And of course, we want to say a big shout out to Julie Cornack,
yes.
Who has been on the show before and has been working. And she does have pins that she gives out that say MAPIA on them, which is the mental health parity. I can't remember all the other letters, but the important part is that it is a basis for you. No matter if you live in a state that says, oh, we only give ABA services to age 7. A lot of times MAPIA has you covered. It has your back for a plethora of things. And so we give a big shout out to Julie Cornack for, first of all, the work that she's been doing. Second, for stepping in and getting back to you and getting you the tools that you needed to go to people to help you to get it done. And third, for introducing you to us so that we could have you here on the show and share this vital information.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, Jim. You're a real inspiration to autism dads everywhere. Thank you
Absolutely.
So much. Well, thank you.
And us. Thank you so much for being with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.